Heidi Love in the house, dropping knowledge and facts, uncovering the truth, no need for acting lax. She ain't afraid to speak her mind, breaking through the lies, rising up with love, taking us to new highs. We're living in a world full of secrets and deceit, but Heidi's here to expose, bringing truth to the beast. She's got a message, spreading it far and wide, from addiction to hope. She's on the other side. Ooh, yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love. And today I have with me a guest that was referred to me by Ghost on Third Eye podcast. And he told me in the midst of one of our discussions, we were talking about John D and numbers. And he said, if you like that, you got to have this guy on. And boy, was he right. Shout out Ghost, Garrick King. You got a story to tell, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Pretty good. This has been a wild ride, reading and listening to episodes and reading bits of your book. And I have to say, it's pretty impressive. Why don't you let our guests know about your book, where to find it, and where to find you before we start out?
Okay. Well, the book is on Amazon. It's available in Kindle, paperback, and hardback. It's called the 1111 Matrix Code. So if you just type that in, it should come right up. Or you can type in my name, Garrick King. It'll come up that way as well. I also have a YouTube channel. It's also called the 1111 Matrix Code. And I also have an Instagram which is 1111_matrix_code. And then I also have a second one, which is I.T.C.C_photography. And that's kind of a side thing I do with instrumental transcommunication. Which, if most people don't know, it's spirit communication using like hydromancy or, spirit boxes, things like that. I've captured some amazing photographs through hydromancy. Ooh. Yeah.
Oh, very similar to philosophers of old, like we were talking about. Very Nostradamus-y of you, I think.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's kind of funny that they've all disappeared, and that's what we were kind of mentioning, is that this kind of thought kind of disappeared, like it's gone. I don't know where the thinkers are, other than podcasts, occasionally maybe like forums online, maybe WordPress back in the day, I don't know, meetings, but it seems to relatively disappear. And when you run into something like this, we need people to help figure this out. There's no way that, first of all, there's no way you could have made this up. We've already had that little chat.
Yeah.
It's really complicated. Like, this is like a complex number system. I don't think you would have come up with that. Much like the Enochian alphabet of John D. So let's let the people know, how this happened to you, because I know it was not really your choice. I really resonate with that, because I also was not going to be a podcaster ever. Also not my choice. So let the people know what happened to you.
Okay, so it's weird, because I've told this story like 1,000 times already. So it's so weird. It basically started in 2009 in January. I have no idea the actual day. I just know it was in January. It was one night I just woke up and it was 3:33. Okay, so I just woke. I mean, when I say woke up, and going forward, when I say wake up, I mean instantly, like I'm dead asleep and then I'm just awake. It's not like, I'm kind of coming out of some groggy state or whatever. It's just like I'm asleep and then I'm awake. So this particular night, I instantly wake up. I look over at the clock. It's 3:33. And I mean, the number meant nothing to me at that time. It has all these, sort of mystical elements about it being the witching hour and all of this stuff. I didn't know any of that. So I didn't think anything about it. I just rolled over and went back to bed. Mm-hmm. So the second night, same thing happened. Wide awake, 3:33. So I'm like, okay, this is odd,
Right.
And then the third night it happened. And then the fourth night. And I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm like, what's going on? So I'm trying to find a reason. There has to be a logical reason. So, I start questioning, is it the ice maker dumping ice or something, in the middle of the night? Right. It's never woken me up before, but you never know. I thought maybe I had a watch, stored away in a drawer somewhere, and for whatever reason, it was going off at that time. I don't know why I would ever set an alarm for 3:33 a.m. But again, I'm just trying to think,
Right.
is there something that's causing this? And at this particular time, I lived with roommates. I asked them, like, are you guys getting up, in the middle of the night? They were a couple. They had a son. He was a teenager. So, teenagers stay up all night.
Right.
I asked him and he's like, no, I'm usually in bed by 1:30, 2 o'clock. And I mean, it was just consistent every night. And this literally went on from January until November, every single night. Now, and I know how ridiculous that sounds. I'll be the first person to say it.
Right.
It sounds
Right.
made up, but it's not. It absolutely is not. There's only one night that I did not wake up at that time, and that's because I literally set an alarm to wake myself up at 3:15 so that I could be awake at 3:33, because I wanted to find out, okay, what is going on? There's got to be something going on inside this house that is waking me up. Is it a neighbor coming home? Are they clicking their, clicker and their car's beeping? Is it something? So I set the alarm, woke myself up, literally just laid there waiting for the clock to roll over. It rolled over to 3:33. And I mean, the house is just dead silent. There's nothing. So I couldn't ever figure it out. So it was really when, at this particular time, my husband and I were just dating. So at this particular time, when I drove, we would take turns driving back and forth from Miami, Oklahoma, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lived in Tulsa. We still live here now. But at that time, he lived in Miami. So we would take turns driving back and forth. And my first weekend to go see him, I was like kind of anticipating this night of being able to just to sleep through the entire night without any disruptions. Well, lo and behold, I wake up at 3:33.
Surprise.
So, yeah. It was just odd because it didn't matter where I was. If I went to go visit my husband, if I went to go visit my parents and stay the night or the weekend with them, it would happen there. So that's when it became clear that it wasn't something in the house. It was something to do with me. Whatever that was. I mean, I still, to this day, I can't tell you what was, initiating that, other than some kind of divine influence. So when it actually ended in November, now this is very interesting. The night that it ended, I had a dream that my father came to visit me. My father passed away 2 years prior to this in 2007. And it was so odd because he was stepping out of the closet of my bedroom. And I was just like propped up on my elbow, and I'm just sitting there staring at him. And I think I was just more in shock. So the first thing out of my mouth was, what are you doing here? Like, this is like, you're dead. I was there.
Right.
I saw you. And before he could even answer, I woke up. And when I woke up, I was still propped up on my elbow like I was in my dream. And I look over at the time, it was 7:15 in the morning. So I had actually slept through the entire night. Now, is a kind of an odd connection with that and my dad, which I'll get to later if I don't forget. So from that point forward, I never woke up at 3:33 a.m. ever again.
Wow.
I did develop a sleeping issue. Where
I'm sure.
Yeah, I developed like a really poor sleeping habit after that, and I had to go to the doctor, and he prescribed me Ambien to take, which is terrible. I don't recommend that for anybody. But we have to fast forward to 2014. My husband and I got married, and we had to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, because we couldn't get married in Oklahoma. At that particular time, it wasn't legal. So we go to Santa Fe, and my intention when we got married was to take my husband's last name. But I was not aware that if I had just signed our marriage certificate as Garrick King, taking my husband's last name instead of Staggs, my last name, it would have legally changed my name. So I had to go through the court process of doing that. Well, yeah. So we got married in July. And so when we got back, it kind of cost us a lot. At the time, we weren't making a whole ton of money. And I still wanted to go through the process of changing my name, which was about $300, I think, $300 to $400. And so I was like, okay, let's still plan for me to do it, but let's wait until the following year because Christmas is coming up. We've got my family, your family to buy for. So, let's just, start saving up our money now for Christmas, and then we can focus on this next year. So that's what we did. So the following year, 2015, I started the process. It takes a little bit of time to get a court date, to go to a judge. And so it finally happened in August. I officially became Garrick King, taking my husband's last name. So that started a whole new issue. It was just shortly after that. I mean, probably within just a couple of days. My husband went to bed early one particular night. I stayed up doing some writing, and I wrote until about, I don't know, it was like around 10:30. I decided it was time to go to bed. So I go upstairs, and I always would read just a little bit, kind of quiet my mind and focus on one particular thing, and, allow myself to get sleepy enough to fall asleep. So I read for probably, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes until my eyes started getting a little droopy. And so I took my Kindle, I set it face down, and I always set it face down just because if any notifications came through or something like that, I didn't want the light to pop on in the middle of the night, wake me up. So I lay down, I closed my eyes, and my eyes could not have been closed for more than, I don't know. I mean, this is probably an exaggeration to say 30 seconds. It was probably quicker than that. But imagine, if you can, your eyes are closed, you're in a dark room, and it was as though someone had wheeled in this giant spotlight and put it right in front of my face and turned the light on. Because it's like this piercing white light is just shining through my eyelids. And I'm just like, what is going on? And it was so odd because it didn't hurt my eyes. It wasn't like I had to squint or anything like that. It was just magnificently white. I cannot describe it. The odd thing is, I did not open my eyes to see what was causing it, where this light was coming from. I laid there for a few seconds, or maybe a minute or two, trying to rationalize where this light was coming from. And so my first thought was, we lived in a townhouse, and I thought maybe someone had pulled into the parking lot area and their headlights were shining through the window. But our bedroom was on the second floor. So that is impossible. And I've always said it, unless that car was flying, which I doubt that it was, there's no way the lights could shine through our bedroom window. So then I thought, okay, shit, someone, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I can swear or not.
You can, yes. I'm hearing an echo. I'm going to come back in and come back out. I think it does this once in a while. StreamYard is my bane of existence. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm just going to remove myself and add myself again because I have no. Okay, I hope that knocks it off. Can you hear an echo?
See if it echoes.
Yeah, because it kind of sounds like it is still. It's StreamYard, but sometimes, let's see if I can go to my settings and make sure my audio echo cancellation is on. It's when this happens when I do a Zoom with somebody else, and then I come on. Okay, I think that's better. I think that fixed it. Anyway, when you go from Zoom to StreamYard, it freaks it out. And I did a Zoom. So
does it like cross stream?
So no flying cars probably on the second floor. Hopefully, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be cool if there was. So yeah, then my thought goes to that, was it possible that someone had broken in and they were shining a flashlight in my face? So, but then I go, like, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, the dogs aren't waking up. There was no sound of breaking glass or the door getting kicked in, or, the alarm didn't go off, and it's just odd that I would sit there and try to rationalize it instead of just like, why? Just open your freaking eyes and look.
Fear.
Yeah,
maybe.
So, after going through this, sort of trying to figure it out, I decide to open my eyes, and imagine, if you can, you're seeing this brilliant, bright white light. You open your eyelids and it's pitch black. There's nothing there. And I like sit up, I'm looking around the room, and I'm like, what in the hell was that? Because I had never experienced anything like that in my entire life. So I look over at the clock to see what time it was. It was 11:11. Now, that number now has, kind of a huge significance, and it's all over the internet, et cetera, et cetera. But at that particular time, I had no idea what this number was, that people considered it an angel number, any of this stuff. I just looked at the clock. That was the time. I was like, okay, laid down and tried to fall, asleep, still thinking about what this white light was.
All right.
The next morning, I go to work. I'm talking to a coworker. I'm explaining to her, about the white light, what had happened. And she makes the comment that, she thinks that it was a visitation. I think she was kind of insinuating that maybe it was my father. And so I made a half-assed joke about, well, if it was, they need to come during normal business hours, not at night when I'm trying to go to sleep.
Right. Give me a sleep disorder.
Exactly. So I we talk for a few more minutes. I go to my cubicle. I sit down. I start working, get my day started. A couple of hours pass. My stomach starts to grumble. And I'm thinking, okay, it's probably close to lunchtime. I look up at the time, and it was 11:11 a.m. And I had a brief thought in my head that, I even just thought, I hope this shit is not starting again.
You're like, no, what is happening?
Yeah. It's like when you see a number once, it's okay. But at this point, after seeing 333 for practically, well, it was 11 months. When I started, if I saw 11:11 once and then I saw it again, of course, it's going to make me think, okay, this better not happen.
Oh boy.
But I couldn't have been more wrong. From that moment forward, that number started materializing every place I looked. I mean, it would show up on receipts. It would show up. I remember being on the highway in this truck driving by, and it had this huge long number down the side of the trailer. And right smack dab in the middle of it was 1111.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I understand and I get it. I get that we can, like unconsciously or subconsciously train ourselves to look at the time, at that specific time. Like, you could just do it. It's almost like when you set your internal body clock, to wake yourself up at a certain time every day. But
right.
I get that part. But when it starts showing up on receipts, like I said, on vehicles, on license plates. I remember working on a file at work and, attaching it to an email. And when I attached it, it said that the file size was 11.11 kilobytes. It was just these little tiny things, of that number showing up. Now, it didn't happen every single day, but it happened consistently enough that I got to a point where I just thought to myself, like, this is happening for a reason. This number is presenting itself to me for a reason. What is it? And this literally like rocked on from 2015 until 2021, just
Wow.
consistently seeing the number. And I'd even ask my friends, like, have you ever heard of this number 1111? Because I started researching it, and found all these websites about it being an angel number, that it was a sign from the universe. If you see 1111, make a wish, which I will admit I tried and wish didn't come true.
Yeah. I wish I could stop seeing this number. No.
Yeah. Exactly. But it just happened so much. It was so consistent that I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I have to start finding out if there's some kind of connection. There has to be a connection. There has to be a reason this number is presenting itself. So keep in mind, this only began after my husband and I got married and I legally changed my name. Okay. So here's the odd, people are going to think of them as coincidences, but as we go on, you'll get to a point where you realize, okay, this is too coincidental to be a coincidence. Right. So changing my name from Garrick Staggs to Garrick King, my name became exactly 11 letters long. First name ends in K. Last name now begins with K, and K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. So it literally encoded in my name with those two Ks next to one another is 1111.
Oh, wow.
I was born September 2nd. 9 and 2 is 11. September 2nd is the 245th day of the year. 2 plus 4 plus 5 is 11. My father, he was born April 7th. So 4 and 7 is 11. He passed away in November. November's the 11th month. His father also passed away when my dad was 16. So I never got to meet my grandfather. He passed away in the month of November, the 11th month. So these odd connections like that, I started finding them. And then, so that kind of made me start looking at numbers everywhere. And I started looking at our address. I took all of the numbers in our current address that we lived at that time, added them together. And I believe the first address the result was 38. 3 and 8 is 11. When we moved from there, the second address did the exact same thing. The resulting numbers were 47, which further reduces down to 11. 7 and 4 is 11. So again, strange connections, still no idea what the hell it meant. There was a time where I had received an email from Old Navy. And this is kind of odd because I hadn't shopped at Old Navy in years at that particular time. And I don't even know how they had my address, my email address. But the subject line of the email was, "It's 11:11." I open up the email because, of course, I'm curious, seeing this. And there's no indication at all in this email of why that subject line was even there. It was not November. It was not November 11th. It was not time-stamped at 11:11. I mean, it was just a normal, 10%, 20% off sell.
Right.
But it was not in November. Yeah. So why the subject line? So I took a screenshot of it, sent it to one of my coworkers, not paying any attention as to what time it was, until after I sent it, I realized it was 11:11 p.m. when I sent it to her.
Oh, wow.
And then I also realized that it was the 11th of 11 attachments that I had sent her over a period of time. That one just happened to be number 11. And I started pointing that out to her. And she was like, when she started seeing this, then she was like, okay, I think you need to see an exorcist.
Good recommendation. Funny.
And I was like, well, I said, I don't get the impression that it's dark, It's evil, I can't explain it, but yeah, I just don't get that feeling. So again, just these very, very bizarre number connections like that. So when we moved from that final address to where we currently are now, the numbers in this address do not total up or equal 11. However, when we came to look at the house for the very first time, we drove by just looking at the outside. I drove down to the end of the street, pulled into a parking lot, was backing up. And as I was backing up, I was looking in my side mirrors and I saw the house number of the house immediately behind us. And that house number was 1111. So it kind of came to me as like a sign that, you know, this house that we're living at is the house that we would be moving into, because we were looking at several different ones. Now, there was an odd sort of paranormal experience that happened as we were looking at the house, and it ultimately made me not want to move here. But my husband loved the house. Yeah, basically what it was is when we were walking through and looking at everything, I opened up a closet door and was immediately rushed at by this force of cold air. And I mean, it felt like it just went right through me. And I became instantly sick, just sick to my stomach. And I like shaking. I was shaking and I was trying to hide it. And so the landlord, you know, she like had the lease and everything. And it was actually an application that we had to fill out. And I wished I had a copy of it because I'm sure my handwriting was like you couldn't read it. I'm sure it was so shaky. So we left, you know, I told my husband, you know, like this happened, you know, like
right. This house. I know you love it, but we're calling the exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kept praying to God that she would not call us. But I wasn't so lucky. She called us the next day and said, "Hey, you guys are approved." And I was like, "Oh, shit."
Yay, I guess.
So I told my husband, I was like, "Hey, before we move in, I am cleansing the hell out of that house." And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it was almost like the difference of night and day after I cleansed it. It was just like everything brightened up in the house. Yeah,
well,
it was awesome. So, but again, just seeing that 11
photography first.
I know. I actually started doing that after we moved in here. But yeah, seeing that number at the end of the street, that house number, just I took it as a sign, you know, that we would be moving here. So, but anyway, let's fast forward to 2021. This is when all of it started coming together. It was I was just sitting here literally working during the day, and there was a sudden reappearance of 333. It was showing up as the time. I think it even, I saw it somewhere on the computer. Might have been a file. I can't remember exactly. But it was presenting itself multiple times, and not just 333, but so was 1111. Like all in one day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I just started thinking to myself, okay, is there a connection between these two these two numbers? I no sooner had the thought than this, and I call it a thought. I did not hear a voice in my head. It was just a thought popped in my head. And the thought was, take those two numbers and multiply them together. So that's what I did. So 1111 times 333 is 369963. It's a palindrome. It's the same forwards and backwards. Not only that, the 369 part of it stood out to me because of Nikola Tesla. And he has this quote. A lot of people quote him saying that if you only understood the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, you would hold a key to the universe.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So started with one number, and then it went to another number. And now I have this third number, you know. What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Another random thought pops into my head. Add 1111 to that number. So I did. The resulting number is 371074. Again, it's like the numbers were starting out small and they were just getting bigger and bigger as they went along.
You're like carrying tablets around. Hold on, let me get them.
So, I mean, literally, I'm like, okay, I'm staring at this number. I don't see what is literally right in front of my face. It took some time, but I gradually got there. But I think it was about 2 days go by, and I'm just, like kind of focused on this number. No other thoughts are coming to me. I'm just trying to figure this out, not getting anywhere with it. And then, like I said, it was 2 or maybe 3 days later, another random thought pops into my head. And that was take 369963, add it to that number, 371074, and then every new number that you get. Okay. So I did. Started doing it by hand, just adding them up. I kind of get a little crazy. I took it all the way up into the 100 billions.
Oh my goodness. You must like math.
No, I hate math. I hate math. I've always joked around that in school, I hated math to the point that I would rather take a hammer to both of my testicles than to get up in front of a class and do a math problem. Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah.
Seriously, disliked math. So, but again, I just wanted to see what would happen. It took a while, but I started like doing all of the things that I think most people would do, like looking at the numbers, reducing them down, adding up the numbers individually. You see what happens. As I started doing this, I realized that every single number would reduce to the number 4. I was like, okay, interesting. So that actually was the key. I didn't realize it at the moment, but it was the key. When you take the last 4 digits of every single one of these numbers that is generated, and you add whatever is remaining, every single number comes back to 1111. So, for example, the first number that was generated, 371074. If you take 1074 and add 37, you'll have 1111.
Oh, man.
Now, the second number generated is 741037. Now, think about that. The first number is 371074. Second number is 741037. It's basically the same number swapped. So the 37 from the first number has jumped to the end of the second number, and the 74 at the end of the first number has jumped to the beginning of the second number.
Wow.
And the same thing happens. So 1037 plus 74 is 1111. The third number ends up being 1111000. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. It's just bizarre how all of this began to play out. And because I was doing it by hand, I actually made a mistake. It was a mistake that you'll see here in just a moment, how, again, it's like the mistake was meant to happen. So what happened is basically, I can't remember exactly what number it was, but I fat fingered a number that caused every number from that moment forward to come back to 5 ones instead of 4 ones when you did that math of taking the last 4 and adding the remaining. And I should point out, too, that as the numbers grow and get larger, because like I said, I took this all the way up into the 100 billions, what you do is you take the last 4, the next 4, the next 4, and then whatever's remaining. As it grows, you just keep going 4, 4, 4, and then whatever's left. It will always come back to 1111 every single time. So that was, of course, shocking to me.
Right.
It
What is
sounds
your
like-
husband thinking? Like at this time, and you're telling him your most confidant,
Yeah.
or your best
Well,
friend, whoever you're talking to about this. Like they've got to be like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, my husband, he's not like 100% on board with anything paranormal. It kind of scares him. He kind of shies away from it. So, he'll listen, be like, yeah, that's interesting. No, go away.
Keep it over there. Keep your business.
keep it up in your office. Just keep it there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do have a coworker, same one that I sent that, screenshot to, that I have been talking to her ever since it started. So she's kind of been there from the very beginning. She's witnessed this. And, in the very beginning, at first, she was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. It's crazy coincidence, you know. But now she's like, okay, this is just, it's too far. It's too far to be a coincidence.
So weird.
So kind of may start jumping around here a little bit, but going off of that mistake that I made, okay, where every number came back to 5 ones instead of just 11, 11. One of the things that I did is I started getting into, you know, gematria, however you want to say it. I just say gematria, but other people say it's gematria. I started getting into that and looking at the numbers. Now, one of the things, this is all very telling, but one of the things I did is I immediately plugged in 333 and just looked to see what kind of phrases. I used gematrix.org to see what kind of phrases would come back that had the value of 333. Now, the ones that really stood out to me when I looked was the tool. Okay, gematria is a tool. Magic secret. Speaking in code. Hidden intelligence. A code to find God. Angelic host. Looped time. Earth ends. Message of end. Strangely beast sigil. And uncloaked. All of those have the value of 333. So I then plug in 11, 11. These phrases are even more interesting.
Oh boy.
So the quantum number, the architect of the matrix, great ability to decipher code. Now you start to see we're getting these messages about a code. Hidden knowledge, most possessed number, just a dream, be aware of God, twin flame, who is Bob? This one is very interesting. It sounds weird, but you'll see the connections here in a minute. The interconnectedness of gematria. So that's what we're going to start seeing is these connections taking place. Jesus' blood. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. Gematria is anagram equals great I am. So you can actually rearrange the words gematria and get great I am. Which is interesting that you would get that phrase and it actually does what the phrase says it's going to do. Represent the chosen mathematician. Let us create man in our image, only the truth in open singularity. So, as I was looking at these numbers, I was looking at 369963. One of the things that again, just playing with these numbers, trying to figure them out, trying to figure out what they do, what it's meant for. One of the things that I realized with that number, 369963, is any 4-digit number that you add to 369963 will come back to the original number that you just added to it if you use that method of taking the last 4 digits and adding the remaining. So, as an example, let me pull up my calculator here. Okay, so give me any 4-digit number other than 1111.
Okay, 8676.
Plus 8676. Okay, so the resulting number is 378639. So we're going to take 8639, add 37, and we have 8676. So
Weird.
every 4-digit number will do that. So that was 2021 when I'm like trying to figure this out. So I literally took 2021 and added it to 369963. And the result is 371984. Okay. So this kind of stood out to me because of 1984, George Orwell's 1984. But interesting, 1984 is 11 years after I was born. I was born in 1973. So if we add 37 to 1984, we'll get 2021. So the question became, what do I need to add to it to make it come back as 37202, like the current year? And the answer was 2058.
Mm.
So 369,963 plus 2058 is 372021. So 2021.
Ooh, weird.
So one of the first things that I did was I go and start searching the internet. Now, it's incredibly difficult to search a year that's never even happened.
Right.
But I tried it. Let's see what happens. So I go to the internet. I just type in the year 2058. An article comes back. I think it was like the third one down. It was in the Guardian. I actually have this in the book. And it's in the Guardian, and it was called Apocalypse 2058. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I start reading this. And the article is about this geophysicist named Didier Sournay. He's this French guy. And he looks at things like the Dow Jones Index. And he found this structure within it that showed in the year 2058, there was going to be this huge population explosion. And it was like through the Dow Jones Index. I don't have the article up to remember exactly everything that it said. But it talked about a singularity. These events would come into, it would cause a singularity. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, wait a second, 1111, open singularity. It has the same value. And he's talking about this year 2058. So I go to the internet and using Google, I'm trying to find this here.
I could share screen too.
So using Gematria, I typed in 2058 and these phrases came back. Many deadly diseases of the apocalypse, a breakaway society, and then this one, Earth can't sustain 7 billion people. And then the last one, revelations become evident. So then I typed in how many billion people live on the Earth, because I didn't know. And it comes back with 7.8 billion people at that particular time. Now, keep in mind, the value of Earth can't sustain 7 billion people is 2058, and it's already telling us that 7.8 billion people are already on the planet. Mm-hmm. And then it says, with the world population at 7.8 billion people as of March 2020 and typical projections of population growth, Earth will be in a state of human overpopulation by 2050 or sooner. Now, 2050 and 2058 is only the difference of 8 years. It's not that far off. So that was just this bizarre connection, but it's going to get even more bizarre. Now, keep in mind that guy, his name was Didier Sournay. Okay. So I'm trying to go in order here, how all this came about. So when I realized that I had made a mistake in the numbers that I was calculating, the way that I realized this was as I was going through, I started noticing that in my spreadsheet that there was certain numbers that were made up of nothing but ones and zeros. It looked like binary code to me. So I took all of those numbers out and set them aside. And I went to this website that was binary code to text translator to see if there was some kind of hidden message there. So I typed in the numbers exactly as they were, as they came up when I was adding them together. I kind of had this hope, I guess, that there would be this huge message come out of this. There was nothing. What it returned was nonsense. It made no sense whatsoever. As I was about to give up, I noticed on this website, it showed an example of the numbers, laid out, and their numbers were laid out in 8 digits. So I was like, And then every single one of them started with a 0. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I decided to reformat my letters, or not letters. I always get these confused. So I always say letters and numbers because in my mind, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
So I formatted my numbers to match theirs. So if the first number started with a 1, I immediately added a 0, then counted over 8, hit space. And if the next number started with a 0, I left it. If it started with a 1, I added a 0 and then counted over 8, made a space, and so on. When I was done and I hit enter, it returned this, what looked like to me, I'm trying to find it here on my screen. Oh, I know it's in here somewhere. Here we go. So it returned XPK /: WHCMQG at, or the at symbol, like, in an email address.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, well, that looks like crap. It, it doesn't say anything, but it looked like a folder and a directory just because of the colon and the /. So I copied that. I put it into the web browser. I did a search. It returned nothing. So I was like, okay. Well, what would happen if I got rid of the XPK /:, the folder name, and just left the file name, WHCMQG, and the @ symbol? I searched for it, and boom, it returned several results. And I think it was the third one down. It actually showed it because, when you search for something, it'll show you like a little bit of a preview of the text on the page. Those exact letters were there in that exact sequence. So I clicked on it. It was odd. It was as though I had entered a back door of some website because it looked like HTML code. And I was like, whoa, like, where am I?
What's happening? Yeah. Well,
And then I got just a little bit more kind of freaked out because I realized that it was what appeared to be some sort of backdoor to the Security Exchange Commission.
oh,
Yeah.
shoot.
And it was for Credit Suisse Bank in Switzerland. And I'm like looking at this thing and I'm like, okay, like what is going on here? As I'm scanning through this page, it says company, Credit Suisse, central index. It has the number, standard industrial classification. Then it says security brokers, dealers, and flotation companies. It just keeps going. Their IRS number, but it all has zeros. Fiscal year end, like all this technical banking jargon. And I start going down and I'm looking, and then it says business address. And then it says business phone number. Now, keep in mind, this is in Switzerland. So the phone number, 0114144. And then here's where it gets interesting. 3331111.
Right. Oh boy.
Now, for anyone that's saying that I'm making this up, I cannot make up the phone number for a company in Switzerland for, the Credit Suisse Bank.
Oh
So what are the chances? What are the chances that this company would have those 7 digits at the end of their phone number?
Right.
Then as I start researching, well, guess who used to be a board member of Credit Suisse Bank?
Ooh.
Didier Sornay,
Oh wow.
the guy from the article Apocalypse 2058.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what is going on here?
Oh boy.
So it was only after finding all of this that I then realized I made the mistake in my calculations. But it was as though that mistake was meant to happen because it led me to this page, led me to these connections. I mean, it was off the chart. Now, with these particular numbers, the numbers that are generated, I started seeing patterns taking place. So, for example, the final digit of every single number that's generated, it follows a sequence. And let me pull it up here. Whoops. So that sequence, it started with 4, 7, then 0. Okay, now this is interesting here. So starts 4, 7, 0, and then the sequence really begins at that point. So it goes 3, 6, 9, 2, 5, 8, 1, 4, 7, 0. And then it repeats 369 258 1470. And it just repeats over and over and over. These 1111 matrix code numbers, those last digits, all the way up into the 100 billions, it repeats that same sequence. Also, the other thing I realized was the last 4 digits are going down by the number 37, and the numbers at the beginning are going up by 37. Now, this is going to start to branch off later into the Hebrew Bible, Bible codes, the Torah. I mean, it's crazy how all these connections take place. But what's interesting about it starting with 47 and then hitting 0 is I was exactly 47 years old in 2021 when I started figuring this code out. And it's interesting that that would be the first 2 digits at the beginning of this code at the very end of those numbers. Again, people could just go, it's a coincidence. So again, looking at these patterns, looking at the pattern in the first 2 numbers alone, where I talked about how 37 was at the beginning and it jumped to the end. Well, it started forming these, maybe at this point we should share screen if possible. Sure. So I can actually physically show you what was taking place.
If you, I think you just push present at the bottom and then I add it.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Share screen. Don't show these tips again. There we go. Share the entire screen.
Yes. There it is. There we go.
Okay. All right. So let me jump over to here. So actually here, I can show you this really quickly. So here is that Security Exchange Commission's website.
Oh, wow.
And I even put, like, there was an error in the binary code. This is what came up when I typed in those binary code, what looked like binary code numbers. So you can see where it looked like a folder name or a, directory and then the folder name. And then here's their phone number, 333-1111.
Weird.
Yeah. So looking at the first 2 numbers, these symbols started appearing to me. So here's the first 2 numbers generated by the code, 371074, 741037. So you can see 37 here and here, 74 here and here. Now, basically what this is showing us is that the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. Just as we see here with the value of 1111. Now, what are the chances that that phrase would have the value of 1111 and the first 2 numbers, well, all the numbers generated, but the first 2 numbers would physically show us that depiction taking place on screen like this?
Right.
So I started picturing this, and I'm looking, I'm starting to visualize symbols forming in my head. And I started thinking about 333 and 1111. So 333 to me represented a short line, 1111 a slightly longer line, and then 369 was a step up pattern. It plateaued, and then it stepped back down. That closely matches the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. And what's interesting is the length of the pyramid is 720 feet. Well, 7 plus 2 is 9. The width is 740 feet. 7 plus 4 is 11. So you could literally go 9 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. Now, back to that 371074. Well, if you take the same numbers and you start running them vertically, you can see that it sort of repeats itself. So 371074 going across, then it comes up, it goes over to the left, comes down. It's just repeating itself. I took that and made this symbol, which is an ancient symbol for the sun, and lined it up with the Aztec sunstone, and it fits perfectly. Literally fits perfectly. One of the other things that I did when I started visualizing these symbols is when I was talking to like my brother and explaining, like, when you take the last 4 digits and add the remaining, I would do this thing with my finger. I would draw a line, like I was drawing a line of the last 4 numbers and then swooping over to the remaining numbers like this. Zoom out here, move that over. So it's like a line of the last 4, swoop over to what's remaining. So this sort of, again, formed, in my mind, another symbol or image of the sun, this time a setting sun.
Mhm.
And then I started thinking about the numbers, the last digits, how they go in that pattern of 3, 6, 9, 2, 5, 8, 1, 4, 7, and realized that it's following the same sequence as a calculator. 3, 6, 9, 2, 5, 8, 1, 4, 7. And then 0, obviously, down here.
Mhm.
Which, in my mind, I saw this as like 3 arrows pointing up, but pointing up at what exactly? Now, we've already seen the Pyramid of the Sun, the Aztec Sunstone, a setting stone, or not stone, but setting sun image. And then, of course, this image here from the 371074 and the other number forming the sun symbol. Now, one of the other things that I did too was I, again, trying to figure out these numbers, just trying to figure them out. I took the first number that was generated and added it to the second one, and it produces this number 11121111. I took that number, added it to the third number of the 1111 matrix code, and got this number 2223111. And I repeated that all the way down. As I started looking at these numbers and using that same method of taking the last 4 digits and adding the remaining, look what happens here. So 2111 plus 111 becomes 2222. This will become 3333, 4444, and so on. I then took these numbers, reduced them down. So 1111 reduces to 4, 2222 reduces to 8, 3333 reduces to 12, and so on. When I got to the double digits, I then reduced those down to a single digit. So 12 will reduce to 3 because 1 and 2 is 3. 16 reduces to 7, 1 and 6 is 7, and so on. When I got this pattern, 4837266159, I plugged that into the internet. It immediately led me to something known as the Vedic square. I've never heard of this thing before this moment. But the Vedic square is essentially a multiplication table where all of the double-digit numbers have been reduced to a single digit. And if you look, that sequence, 4837266159, is running straight across right here.
Right.
We run into a wall of 9s, and there's a floor of 9s. But if we look here, it's also running straight down. Now, if we just simply remove the floor and wall of 9s and look here, we can see the number is going backwards. 48372615, and then technically there should be a 9 over here. And the same thing here. It's running the other direction. It's creating this ancient symbol for the sun. Basically, it's this right here. Okay? But when we see this, we usually see it with a circle around it. So now we have 5 distinct symbols for the sun. And I'm thinking, okay, why this connection with the sun all of a sudden? And the year 2058. Well, we are currently in a 19-year cycle of having these summer solstice solar events. And let me switch over here. Is that it? No. It's in here somewhere. I have this all like spread out. It gets oh, come on, where are you?
No worries.
Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So we had one in 1982. We had one in 2001. We had one in 2020. We'll have another one in 2039. And then we'll have one in 2058. And then we won't have another one for nearly 200 years.
Wow.
Now, these typically are only supposed to happen about every 80 some odd years. But for whatever reason, from 1982 to 2058, they're happening in 19-year cycles. So I start looking at the dates, and again, because my mind is now just in this frame of looking at numbers. And this whole thing will teach you to look at numbers differently. So I start reducing them down. The dates, the month, the day, and the year. Start reducing the numbers down. It forms a sequence that literally goes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, like in sequential order. So I go to gematrix.org and I type in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it brings back this result of nothing but numbers that are spelled out. And I'm like, why?
Right.
So what was spelled out technically was 13, 21, 12, 29, 16, 12, 5, 9, 14, 6, 9, 14, 9, 25, 23, 1, 22, 5, 19, 16, so on and so forth. As I'm looking at this, I'm trying to figure out, okay, so for example, when it said 20 and 1, is it literally two different numbers or is it 21?
Right.
Well, once I figured this out and I started applying the results to our current alphabet, it actually produces a message. It says multiple infinite waves of love. So 13 is M, because M is the 13th letter in the alphabet. 21 is U. L is 12. T is 20, and so on. And I thought, well, that's very odd. But then I took all the numbers from that phrase and added those together, and we get 339, which equals end of times.
Hmm.
So there's this like repeating message about the end of times. Like, but what's it leading to? You know, we got 2058, Apocalypse 2058. Now these phrases, end of times. As it begins to go on, what basically I started putting together was that some kind of event is going to happen in 2058. And with all of these references to the sun, it appears to me as though it's going to be a solar flare event. And it's going to be devastating. It's essentially going to be a reset. Because as you will see as we go on, this is really starting to point towards the idea that we live within a simulation. And it's all controlled through math, essentially the code. But one of the interesting things here before I go any further is this symbol right here for the sun. And as I said, we usually see it like this with a circle around it. When I looked up the address for the Credit Suisse Bank in Google, and I clicked on street images, the very first image that came up was this one here. And look what's on the back that person's carrying. Now, I understand it's the symbol for the, this Swiss flag. I get it. But it's the exact same symbol that was coming up from the numbers, the 1111 matrix code. Now, the other interesting thing, too, is when all those numbers came back to 5 ones instead of 11 ones, I also plugged that into gematrix.org, and it produces this phrase: we are in an artificial matrix. We are slaves We are being punished. We are being further tested and tried. Like silver, 7 times in the fire, the few and refined shall rise.
Hmm.
Now, again, very, very interesting phrase. Now, let's see here. And you'll see why here in just a second. Let me pull this up here. I should have had this better organized. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
So as I begin to delve into gematria and looking at the 1111 matrix code numbers, I began to split them apart because the code literally tells us to take the last 4 digits and add the remaining. So that's where I made the split. So for example, I split the first number 37 and then the last 4 1074. So I looked up gematria values for those numbers separately. Now, look at this. So 1074, we get the phrases, behold Jesus, 4x4, simulated reality, the name that equals Christ. Look up, it is God, the Most High, a son declared by the math of God. And then signs the matrix is real and reality is a hoax. Now, when I was researching, I couldn't find anything of significance with the number 37 until I started getting into Hebrew gematria. And in Hebrew, the name for Jesus has the value of 37 in Hebrew ordinal gematria. So interesting that 37 would have the value for Jesus, and the last 4 digits literally say, behold Jesus, and the name that equals Christ, a son declared by the math of God. And then you think about the 3 arrows pointing up. Look up. It is God, the Most High. Now, earlier I mentioned that phrase. Where was it? Who is Bob? Okay. So, I mean, this just gets nuts here. So I got an email one day from, let me pull it up here. Here it is. As you can see, and this is the actual email. So it was someone named Bob. This came to my work email address, not my personal email. And the subject line and the body of the email said, a note from the universe.
Weird.
Yeah. Now, think back to what I was saying earlier when I was first researching the numbers 1111, and I found all these references to it being an angel number and that it was a sign from the universe. The universe is trying to speak to you. And then I suddenly get an email from someone named Bob, and that's all it says. A note from the universe.
Weird.
So I immediately call up my coworker, the one that, has been kind of like
The only
going
one. Yeah.
And I'm like, you've got to see this. So she's like, well, write him back. And I was like, well, but hang on a second. It's like, let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Like, what if this is some kind of email that, it's going to do something to our system if I reply,
Right.
Because it was my work email address. And I was afraid that, it would be a phishing email, some kind of virus attached to it. That if I, replied, it would release the whole thing and take our whole entire system down. So it's like, I'm on the fence about that. I don't feel like I should do that. Well, some time goes by and I'm again talking to my friend about it. And she asked me about this, did you ever reply? And I said no, because again, I'm afraid it would do something to our network. And she's like, it's not going to do anything. Just reply. And then she started like chanting, do it, do it, do it. And I was like, okay, like calm down. So I did. I sent back a reply and I sent it on October 25th, 2021. My reply, what is the message? Because it says a note from the universe. To this day, I have never gotten a reply at all. But here's the weird connections. So the original email came to me on June 25th, 2021 at 10:26 a.m. Now, again, reducing these numbers down. So we add all those up, we get 27, and then 2 and 7 equals 9. When you look at the date and the time that I replied, October 25th, 2021 at 12:29 p.m., and do the same thing, the numbers turn out to be the same. They reduce to 27, and again, 2 plus 7 is 9. Now, what are the chances this email would come and I would reply on 2 entirely separate dates where the numbers reduce to the identical number? Now I start thinking about this too, a note from the universe. And I'm thinking about, okay, a note. And why is note capitalized? Well, and so is you. But for some reason I was fixated on note. And I'm thinking, okay, well, note is an anagram of the word tone. A tone from the universe. Like, is it speaking about a frequency possible? I don't know. But I put these phrases in a note from the universe into gematrix.org, and the result was 1604, a number that reduces to 11.
Mm.
And when you take 1604 and add its mirror opposite of 4061, we get 5665, which is an encoded 1111. Because 5 and 6 is 11, and 6 and 5 is 11. Again, what are the chances? And the simple fact, the guy's name is Bob. And then for it to suddenly show up in over here with, let's see, right here, 259, Bob is real. And then over here, is it true Bob is real? It's like it's answering the question, is it true Bob is real? And then over here, Bob is real. And these numbers are taken right out of the 1111 matrix code. Again, we just have to ask that question, what are the chances of that happening?
Weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was just bizarre. And like I said, to this day, I still have this email. It's sitting in my work email folder. But to this day, I've never, ever gotten a reply. I have no idea who this Bob person is. And what's odd is it just says Bob. There's not even a last name.
Huh.
But as we jump forward here, you know, I started talking about making these connections with Hebrew gematria and the Bible. So that's not actually what I want. Let's see. Actually, before we go there, let's talk about the number 9, because that is very significant. And the fact that email reduces to the number 9. So, and I'm sure you've seen this hundreds of times, but there's some interesting things that happen with the number 9 and all of the numbers 1 through 9. So when you add 1 through 9, you get 45, and 4 and 5 reduces to 9. Let's see. I think I can't remember if you remove 3, 6, and 9, it's 27, I believe, and it's 2 and 7 is 9, and I think if you remove 9 and add all the remaining numbers, it's 36. I could have that flipped, but 3 and 6 is 9. So no matter how you add these up, they all come back to 9. And let's see. Trying to think here. Oh,
Funny enough, my birthday reduced is 9.
Oh, is your birthday reduced to 9?
Yep.
That's cool. Well, and my birth month is 9, so
mine all the 4 added together, month, date, year, then
yeah,
it's to 9. Weird, huh?
That's cool. That's cool. Well, this led me to something known as vortex math. And vortex math basically is where you start with the number 1 and you double it. So 1 doubles becomes 2, 2 doubles becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, and so on. As you start getting up to the double digit numbers, you reduce those down. Okay. So 16 would reduce to 7, 32 would reduce to 5, 64 would reduce to 1, and then the whole sequence starts over again. And the sequence is 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. Well, look what happens when you connect those numbers up here. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and then back to 1. It produces the infinity symbol.
Mm.
Now, the connection here is back to, I think it was 333 with looped time. We're literally seeing a loop created here, a continual loop. And it's also a reference back to the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning, because there is no beginning and there is no end. It happens at the same point. Again, these just odd little connections like that.
Huh.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to think of where I want to go next here. Let's jump over. Okay, so let's jump over here. With the numbers that are generated from the 1111 matrix code. So talking about the last digits. So the 369258147 and it repeats. So when we look here at that same triangle that we had before, but we use those numbers, the 258147, because 369 is already here. So if we draw a line from 2 to 5 to 8 and back to 2, we get this triangle. And then it goes 1, 4, 7. So now if we draw a line from 1 to 4 to 7 and back to 1, we get this triangle. We're getting the Star of David. Now, as I began to look at that, I started wondering, like, what would happen if I connected these points? Well, connecting those, it looks like this.
Mm.
And as I'm staring at this, like the very first thing that pops out to me is a 3-dimensional square or like a box. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Uh-huh.
So then what I'm also realizing is that, okay, so we have a 3-dimensional box square right here, but then we have the makings of another square here. So we have this side, and the bottom. We're just missing the two back sides and the top. So I created these 3-dimensional squares and I started popping them in here. Like so. Oops. And when they're completely filled in, well, what do we have? We have the sun symbol. So then I started thinking, okay, well, what would happen if I extended the lines further out and then encased them in a circle? So that's what I did. And I began to realize, well, hang on a second. I feel like I'm looking at a zodiac wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took all of the zodiac signs and popped them in there, and sure enough, they completely fit. And then when you re-add the sun in there, it's a clear description of the sun moving through all of the zodiac signs. As I started putting these pieces together, this huge puzzle, it became very clear to me that the Son of God is the sun in the sky. They mean the same thing. And this solar flare event that I'm talking about in 2058 would literally be, if this happens the way that I think it's going to happen, If we look at this as being the Son and the Son of God, then it would be like the second coming of Jesus Christ in a solar flare event. And it's going to be a reset, just like the flood in the Bible was a reset. The solar flare event, this will also be a reset. It's resetting the simulation. Okay, let's see here. I may have to open up one of my other spreadsheets here to start showing you these connections in the Bible. Let me do that. Okay, now here's something very, very bizarre. So Genesis 1:1 in Hebrew gematria has the value, and this is literally using the Hebrew letters, it has the value of 2701, the entire verse. Now, remember, the 1111 matrix code numbers are going up and down by the number 37. Well, this verse being 2701 is the equivalent of 37 times its mirror opposite of 73 is 2701. Now, if we take this number, 2701, and add its mirror opposite of 1072, we get 3773. The same two numbers that when multiplied equal 2701.
Wow.
Now, in Hebrew ordinal gematria, 37 is the value of Jesus, and 73 is the value of Christ. So if you wanted to encode the name Jesus Christ and do it in numbers, you would literally just write 3773. And the fact that it's a palindrome, reads the same forwards and backwards, it reads the same as if we were reading it in English or if we were reading it in Hebrew, which Hebrew is read from right to left. So it's going to read both directions. So there's this huge connection to the number 37 and 73. And of course, you know, the numbers going up in the 1111 matrix code by the number 37. Now, one of the things that I did with the 1111 matrix code numbers is I created a new gematria based off the 1111 matrix code numbers. Now, there's 22 Hebrew letters in the alphabet, so I took the first 22 letters, and I only took the first portion, not the last four digits, but the remaining portion. So 37, 74, 111, 148, and so on. And like I said, I created this brand new gematria. You can see the values right here. Now, what's interesting about this is now Genesis 1:1, using this new form of gematria, has the value of 11026. And when we add the mirror opposite of 62011, well, lo and behold, we have 73 and 37. Again, you have to think, like, what are the chances?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And again, this is just another way of encoding the name Jesus Christ. 37 for Jesus, 73 for Christ. Now, in the Bible, you know how it talks about God created man from basically the soil of the earth. And also in the Bible, it refers to the number 666. And it literally says, for it is the number of man, or the number of a man. What are the chances that the Hebrew word for man would now have the value of 666 using matrix gematria? So that was an odd, just like connection, but it was sort of like a revelation. Like it's actually revealing, like it's showing us in real time now that yes, in fact, this is the number of man, 666. So right here, yeah. So 666, the number of man or mankind in general. And what's even more interesting is the name Jesus has the value of 1369 using these numbers for this new gematria. And simply adding the number of man to the name of Jesus, so 666 plus 1369 gives us 2305, which is the value for the word son in Hebrew. And 2305 plus its mirror opposite of 5023 again gives us 7337. Leading us right back to the name Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to minimize this for just a few minutes so I can see you without having that warping effect. So when I start saying this and I start speaking the name Jesus, a lot of people immediately jump on this bandwagon of, oh boy, here we go. Here's a Jesus freak. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not a religious person. Okay. I was raised Baptist, but my parents, we didn't really go to church, mostly because of just how this particular church that my parents went to, how they operated. The preacher, his thing was not, we hope to see you next weekend. It was, you will be here next weekend. And to my mom, you will wear a dress. It was just those types of things. And she's like, well, why can't I wear slacks? As long as I look nice and I'm presentable, why does it matter? So, again, so we didn't really go to church that often. And my parents were not at all like strict Baptist people at all. That's just the church they went to. But, even though I was raised that, I just had this feeling about religion. Something just didn't feel right to me. It felt like kind of like a system of control, which is what it is.
It is. Yeah, exactly.
And, it just raises all these questions that I've had basically my entire life. Like, for example, if God is this infinite being that has the ability to create an entire universe and planets and beings and stars and all this stuff, why did it feel the need to create us? Like, for what purpose? If you're ultimate, infinite God, why do you need to create something to worship you? And then we're told that we're given free will. But if it is free will, if you make the wrong decisions, then you're suddenly punished for the decisions that that you made. So why even give it? Like, if you want us to worship you and only you, then why give us the opportunity or the chance to branch off and worship something else? Like, all these things, it just didn't make any sense to me. So I've always had a hard time with religion and trying to understand it. But as I've gone through this whole process with these numbers and doing all of this research, which my YouTube channel it's roughly over 50 videos now, just breaking this stuff down step by step. And the book does the same thing. Now, I'm kind of jumping around here, so I'm sure a lot of this it's hard for people to grasp the bigger picture. But there's
this
way
was
more
years
going
of
on.
work for you. This
Yeah.
was a long time. Mhm.
Yeah. And you really do. Like, it would take me hours and hours. As you know, with Ghost, we had to split up those interviews into multiple different ones to literally go in order. I'm just trying to jump around here due to time. But for those that are interested, please check out the videos, read the book, and just follow the process, and you will see these connections taking place. But the biggest connection, the biggest connection that I feel that this is leading to is this idea, this fact that we are in a simulated reality. Now, one of the things that resurfaced through this is before any of this ever started, before I even met my husband, I was working at a bookstore here in Tulsa called Novel Idea. And it was around the time that Michael Drosnin's Bible code books came out. And I worked in the receiving department at the bookstore. So I opened up the boxes. I saw those books for the first time when we got them and just instantly had this connection to it and started flipping through it. And I found the whole entire idea of Bible codes fascinating. I don't know if you know anything about them or not.
Yeah, I know that book. I know that he kind of broke it down where the Bible had a hidden message, right, in the words, is what I remember vaguely. But
well, of course, with anything, and I'm sure that we'll even get some on this particular video, you're going to have your people that understand what I'm talking about and see the connections, and then we're going to have people over on this side that are like, okay, this is all bullshit. It's just math. They're going to say that. I've had people say that to me. It's just math. Well, it's not. And I've had people say, well, you're manipulating the numbers to get a certain result. Well, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. If I was manipulating the numbers, I would say, okay, well, let's take this number from over here and then this number from way the hell over here that has no connection, but let's add them together anyway and just see if they, equal 11. Well, that would be pointless. There is a solid structure here and a sequence of the way that all this comes together. But
I wanted to say, have you heard the Galileo quote? It so fits your life if you have not. It says, mathematics is the language in which God has written the universe.
Absolutely.
So these people knew, John Dee knew, like these people, and I'm not saying that he started in a good place. At some point, some people get corrupted. I think they opened themselves up, right? He was talking to angels that were like making his wife sleep with somebody else. So at some point he got lost in the weeds. Okay. Like, I'm not saying that he was perfect, but he had there's certain things that I think God allows like this for you. And then of course, always the allowance of the devil to mess with it, right? Like to come in and taint things, like having him talk to an angel that said, have your wife sleep with somebody else. And at that point, come on, he knew. You don't just say, yeah. You don't just say, you know what, that sounds like a great idea. And then you have to raise this other guy's kid for his life, which is what happened. But at some point, it's always this scale, because God is a very fair person. And he allows us, like you said, like the why is because he doesn't want, that was what Lucifer wanted, was to put us in a controlled box and say, have no other God, have no other choice, put them in this little place where they can't mess it up. Why are you giving them so much opportunity to foul this whole thing up? But that's what he did, because he wanted us to have free agency. And so at the end of the day, I'm always like, listen, just because this may have gone awry somewhere, it doesn't mean it's all throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like with John Dee. It still was a lot of information, and he brought forth another language as well, which is used to this day. And it's mostly in occult circles, but I'm just saying, like, these things matter when you start putting together all the answers, because as a Christian, when I got out of religion and started opening my mind, I found a lot more answers with the occult, though it can drive off in the wrong field. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to be very careful, which is what discernment is about, right? We have to use our brain. That's why we have one.
Right.
But it doesn't make it all nonsense or all bad. Like if he did a bad thing, does that make all his knowledge bad? No, just made a mistake, right?
Well, we're all human.
Mistakes.
Exactly.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. And that's why the code that you got about love is so important, because I think that's the piece. That's why you got that one first. Because at the end of it all, when Jesus was done on the cross, the one thing he wanted us to do after he hung all the old crap on there, all these weird things they used to have to do, and, you know, killing animal, all this weird stuff. He said, it's all done, but what? Love one another. We don't know how. We can't just figure that out, you know? And people will judge, and people will point, and people will say this and that. And I've got a lot of kids, and they're all very different. And people will say to me, well, you're a Christian. You know, this person on your show was gay. My daughter's gay. So you probably don't want to come to me with that. Okay. Like, if you really love people and true love, like that is so irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant what he did. It's irrelevant what I did. None of this matters. We got to figure out the core message, which is what I think you got there. So,
yeah, I mean, I really haven't had anyone attack me or come after me, knock on wood. Now that I've said it, it's probably going to happen. About my being gay, you know.
I had another person that was on my show that I had questions come at me because he was gay. And I'm like, I don't care if he's gay, you know, get a great message. What are you talking about? You know, but
the messages are going to come through in various different ways. So whether it comes through a gay man or a Christian man, you know, or like a clergy member or something to that effect, the message is the same. It's the same.
Message.
Yeah, the message is the message.
Yes. And that's the point is, I think it actually would make more sense to come from somebody that wasn't perfect, because Jesus didn't come to the perfect. He didn't come to any of us that are perfect. Why, like you said, why would he even be existing then?
Right.
Like, why would it even be in this code? Like, if it's a simulation and we don't really need a savior, he's still in the code. So it must mean something. You know what I mean?
Well, here's my take on this, okay? And this really started because I woke up one morning with this dialogue just running through my head, okay? And it was like a long bit of dialogue, but it was repeating itself, just kind of over and over and over, like I was rehearsing a script or something is how I can describe it. But it was, as I was laying in bed, it's sort of in that half awake, half asleep state. And basically what it boils down to is that the concept of Jesus, the name was never meant to be applied to a man. The physical man that existed, his name was Yeshua. And the name Jesus is, through this research, and you can see this in my videos and in the book as well, is pointing towards the idea of Jesus being the essence of the universe. It is the spiritual connection that binds every single thing in the universe together. I hate to do this, but to reference Star Wars, it would be the equivalent of the Force. Okay.
Right.
And the trap here is, do you know what the one unforgivable sin in the Bible is?
Isn't it to deny Christ?
It's blasphemy against the Spirit. So think about this. If a man existed named Yeshua, or the modern Joshua, and you are taking the Spirit, this thing known as Jesus, and applying it to a man as though they are one and the same, you have essentially created a false idol and is blasphemy against the Spirit. So the unforgivable sin has already happened.
Right.
When you see this number 37, it courses through everything. It's going up and down through this 1111 matrix code number. It is throughout the Bible, again, as shown in the very first verse alone. 2701, the value of 37 times its mirror opposite. And again, even that in of itself is showing a balance. The balance that you talked about of good and evil. That balance has to exist. It has to exist in order to keep everything
Right.
basically in a balance. And if
Mhm.
it starts to shift one way or the other, which is what's happening in our society right now, things are shifting very, very badly. And I think that's why it's leading up to a reset.
Mhm.
Now, think about this. Why are they building all of these, what they call DUMBs, these deep underground military bases? Why?
And they're real.
And they're real. They're very real.
My uncle was a Green Beret. They are real.
Yeah. So if they're not anticipating something happening, what's the point of building these things?
And who was the last civilization that hid underneath, I believe anyway, when everything went wrong with the flood and survived?
Exactly.
The Nephilim reappears in the Bible and says they were alive then and now. Like it's skipped over often and people don't really put two and two together. But of course, where would they go? You know?
Yeah.
Underneath. Of
Yep.
course.
Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense.
I mean, one interesting thing. So speaking of Bible codes, I wanted to show you I think if I slide this over to Windows, so I'm running Windows on Parallels the same time as my Mac. So if I slide this over, I won't see you, but hopefully you'll still see my,
Okay.
if you see
I'll
this
let you
window.
know. Sure. Okay. Yes, I
Okay.
can see a code.
Okay. So this is a particular Bible code matrix that I found that points to the idea of this being a simulation. So my master search term was the word artificial, which is running right here vertically in red. Now, maybe I should explain this. So the Bible code software, the way that it works is they have removed all punctuation in all spaces between words. So it's just the numbers running in a straight line, basically. And what happens is when you put in a search term, it will search for that word vertically so that you know for a fact it's impossible for this to appear naturally in the Bible.
Okay.
And when I say naturally, I mean horizontal, like reading the way that it would normally read in the Bible. So we find the word artificial, and then right over here is the word earth. The earth. And then coming straight down over it is God in it. So God in the earth. We also find this phrase code 40, which we know the number 40 is prevalent throughout the Bible. It means 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus wandered, what was it, in the forest for 40 days. So on. There's just the number 40 is repeated over and over and over throughout the Bible. Then we find the word planet. And we also find this phrase in the darkest of all and the word realm. We also find the word illusion. And we also find the phrase in front of RAM, which is resistive random access memory. We also find the phrase the inside, they leaked text, and then the words imitation or simulation. Now, what makes the Bible codes relevant is when these phrases appear the way that they do, so close to one another, oftentimes crossing over other words. I mean, they're extraordinary when you find them. Now, people have argued that because they've done this, they have literally taken like Moby Dick and done the exact same thing and found phrases in it. And said, well, okay, well, then that doesn't prove that the Bible code is real if we can find these codes in any kind of text. But my thought is, well, if this is a simulation and it's all running off of this code, why wouldn't those codes appear in normal text? They should. They should. Now, I think before we went live, we were briefly talking about yesterday's events with Trump.
Oh,
And I told you I had something kind of special that I could show you. So I found this Bible code literally this morning. Okay. Now check this out. I thought I didn't actually use this program. I used another program, but I did take a screenshot of it. So find it here. Okay. Now, what are the chances that I would find the name Donald Trump, the phrase or a word that means shot, shoot, gunshot, or fire?
Oh, wow.
The Hebrew word for the month of July, the year 2024, the date 13, and the word survived.
Wow.
And they're all, and look at this right here. When you actually look at the code, this word right here in blue is the word that means shot, shoot, gunshot, or fire. And this word right here in red is Donald. It's literally to the right, and it's grazing the word just like the bullet grazed his ear. I mean, you can't make this up.
No. Oh, that's crazy.
And what are the chances of that appearing in the Bible?
Weird.
Yeah. Now there's a phrase by this monk. It's an old phrase, and I believe they call him the genius of Vilna or something to that effect. And basically what he says is that every person, every single one of us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, and everything that happens to us in between, is all encoded in the Torah.
Oh, wow.
Now, I have literally found my name in the Torah, Garrick King, with the words 333, or actually, it went this way. So it was Garrick King, the word reveals, 333, 1111, and the word code.
Oh, wow.
And then through my research, I found these phrases that actually contain my name, but have the value of 1111. And those phrases are, in God, Garrick King is the chosen mathematician.
Wow.
And that whole phrase has the value of 1111. And I mean, it sounds weird, and I think it sounds kind of, I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but I'm not trying to make myself sound like I'm something that I'm not, you know. I've had a lot of people on my channel say, like, you're a modern day prophet or whatever. It's like, I'm just a guy, you know, that stumbled across a code, and I'm revealing it, you know. I don't walk a holy path, you know, in my life, you know. Like I said earlier, I never went really to church that much except as a kid. And
yeah, but church isn't God.
No.
I think we all know that. The people that are on my channel definitely subscribe to the fact that church is not God. In fact, it's probably anti more than anything, because like you said, it's a control system. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to show you this really quickly, just so I think it's gematrix.org. Just so people can see that I'm not making this up. So in God, Garrick King is the chosen mathematician. So as you can see, it equals 1111.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. So what was the other one? There was another one too. Actually, several. Let me see if I can find them here. You would think I would have this just right on the tip of my brain.
I'm like this with Mormonism. There's so many things that yeah, I have tons of pages. I get it.
Let's see. That's not it. Oh yeah, that's the other cool thing I added as a bonus feature in the book was connecting this code to the events of 9/11. And when you really start thinking about that, actually, let me show you that really quickly, and then if we need to, I don't know how you are on time, but if we can,
I don't schedule back to back. It's just too hard. So you're free to go until you're ready.
okay. So let's make these connections really quick here. I can show you this, and then I'll come back to those phrases when I find them. So this code, this 1111 matrix code, I mean, it is encoded in the events of that day. So simply the fact that it happened on September 11, 9/11, 9 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. There were 4 flights that day. Now, one of the things that I talk about in the book too is, again, you have to stop and start looking at numbers differently. So the number 4 is essentially the equivalent of the number 1111, okay? Because, like, think of the ways that you can achieve the number 4. You can take 2 plus 2 and get 4. You can take 2 times 2 and get 4. You can take 5 minus 1 and get 4. But no one stops and thinks of the most obvious one, which is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1.
Right.
Or essentially 1111. So September 11th is the 254th day of the year. Now think about my birthday is the 245th day of the year. This is the 254th day of the year. So 2 plus 5 plus 4 is 11. There are 111 days remaining from September 11th to the end of the year. So literally, if we took the 11 from that day of the year and added it to or put it in front of the days that are remaining, we would actually achieve the 5 ones that I talked about earlier that produced the phrase, we are in an artificial matrix, we are slaves, we are being punished, so on and so forth. Now, as we move forward, first flight was American Airlines Flight 11. Well, think of it, A, American Airlines. It's the first letter of the alphabet. It's the number 1. So AA is 11. There were 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. So 81 plus 9 plus 2 is 92, and 9 plus 2 is 11. It struck the North Tower at 8:46. So 8 plus 4 plus 6 is 18. 1 and 8 equals 9. So 9 plus that 11, or 1 is 11 again. Also, 846 plus 11 is 857. And if you subtract 857 from 1111, you get 254, which connects back to the 254th day of the year. Now, the second flight, 17 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., the South Tower was hit. So 9:03 plus 17 is 9:20, and 9 and 2 is 11. Also, 1 plus 7 is 8, and 9 plus 0 plus 3 is 12, which reduces to 1 plus 2 equals 3. So we have 8 plus 3, again, is 11. Now, the South Tower was hit by United Airlines Flight 175. Both towers collapsed within an hour and 42 minutes, leading to the collapse of World Trade Center 7. So if we look at those numbers, so 175, that's the flight, plus 7, that's building 7, equals 182, and 1 plus 8 plus 2 is 11. Now we take 903, which was, let's see, oh, that's from the other one. 903 and 175 is 1078. If we subtract 1078 from 1111, we get 33, which is, just pointing this out, it's the highest level of the Masonic order. But it connects to this flight, the third flight. Third flight, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon at 9:37. So we take 7 plus 7, that's the flight number, plus 9 plus 3 plus 7 equals 33. 33 connects flight 3 to flight 2 to complete 1111. Then there's the fourth flight. Fourth flight, United Airlines Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03. So 1003 plus 93 equals 1096. Reduce that down. 1 plus 9 plus 6 is 16. 1 plus 6 is 4. So 7 and 4 is 11 because 4 is the fourth flight.
Mm.
Now, let's look at gematria connections. So these phrases have the value of 1111. Twin flame. What were the twin flames? The two twin towers that went up in flames. Now, 411. That phrase also has the value of 1111. Well, that literally is telling us that 4 also is 11. Like 1111. It's literally saying it and it's showing us. Triple given name. What is the triple given name? World Trade Center. That has the value of 1111. Also, Freemason number calculation. We just saw that. That phrase has the value of 1111. And then warning lie has the value of 1111. Now, there's all this talk about how we were warned, or the government was warned, that this was going to happen. And they've possibly lied to us about the whole entire thing. Now, bin Laden was killed May 2nd, 2011. Well, 5 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. The World Trade Center, or One World Trade Center, the new building, opened in the month of November, the 11th month. And the phrase 11th month has the value of 1111.
Mm.
Again, how can you have these connections like this?
Well, and Crowley had a fascination. There's a whole book by, oh my gosh, why am I? It's slipping my mind at the moment, but I'll think of it. But he wrote a whole book about Crowley's fascination with 11 and how it was kind of a warning about this going to happen about 9/11. Have you seen this? William Ramsey. That's shout out to William Ramsey. Yeah, he talked about it a little bit on my show, but he has a book about it, and it's just fascinating. But not just him, a few people that are really into it. I had a Freemason come on that's also an author, and he talked about the same thing, and they missed it regardless. It's just kind of wild that they had so many warnings, and yeah, makes you definitely feel that that's orchestrated.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, here's what I mean. This is just, to me, this kind of just ties it all back together. When you look at the flight numbers and you start reducing the numbers down. So flight 11, 1 and 1 becomes 2. Flight 93, 9 and 3 becomes 12. 1 and 2 then becomes 3. 175, add those together. So 1 plus 7 plus 5 is 13. 1 and 3 becomes 4. So flight 77, 7 and 7 is 14. 1 and 4 is 5. Do you see a sequence? 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, most people don't realize that there was a 5th flight that day. United Airlines Flight 23. Now, instead of adding, I've multiplied. Why? Because the flight never took off. It never left the ground. It was crossed out. This indicated to me to multiply. So 2 times 3 is 6. That completes the sequence 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are the same numbers that I plugged into gematrix.org that returned that phrase that was nothing but numbers spelled out that ultimately produced the phrase multiple infinite waves of love. And that's exactly what happened that day. And that's what went out to the entire world when the news hit. Everyone just in anguish of what happened. Multiple infinite waves of love went out that day.
That's fine.
Now, that particular flight, it was to fly from New York's JFK airport, and it was bound for Los Angeles. The plane had already pulled away from the gate and was literally taxiing down the runway when the airport was shut down and the crew was ordered to secure the cockpit. This was never mentioned in the 9/11 Commission report. Never. So again, it's these bizarre connections. Now, I'm sure you've seen the Matrix films.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the new film that came out, I mean, it was okay. I wasn't a big fan of it.
Yeah.
But there's encoding taking place in this film. So at the very beginning of the film, the lead character, she's, jumping from one building to another, and she slides down this sign. And I paused it and I looked, and the sign says, "For those who love to eat shit."
What? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Most people probably didn't catch on to that. Well, I typed that into gematrix.org because I'm thinking, why does it say that?
Right.
So for those who love to eat shit, in Jewish gematria, the reduction value of that phrase is 11. The ordinal value of it is also 11.
Mm.
And then also, these phrases have the value of 2585. We warned you, those that are dangerously brainwashed, you are my end and you are my beginning, which is a close connection to the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. What is this energy source of a human being? Well, in the Matrix film, the energy source of a human being, sorry, let me back up. The energy source of the Matrix are the human beings.
Right.
And then we also see the phrase, remove the veil from their eyes, which is what happens when you are woken up out of the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me jump over here. So when she's running on the top of the building and being chased, there's another sign that shows up, and it's in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish, so if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, I apologize. But it's something along the lines of sabor a mirade. And it literally means taste of shit. So why are these signs on the top of these buildings? And the phrase taste of shit has the value of 353, which reduces to 11.
Hmm.
And then also 353 gives us God's a math code, the force of light, solar flare, Higgs boson, and darkened skies.
Exposed in there. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then there's a full, it's kind of blurry because you can't screenshot a movie on your Mac because it'll make it black, copyright. But I had to do it with my phone. So, but here's where it gets even more interesting. So there's this scene, and there's a number here on the door, 155. 1 plus 5 plus 5 is 11. Okay.
Wow.
There's a cop car here. And that cop car has a number, 42 space 334. Now, again, this teaches you to look at numbers differently. So the fact that there's a space means it's removed. 42 is removed from 334. It's telling me to subtract it. When you subtract it, you get 292, which is an encoded 1111, because 2 plus 9 is 11. 9 plus 2 is 11. Also, 29 plus 92 is 121, which is the equivalent of 11 times 11. Now, the most interesting one is this one. They are running out of a theater, and the movie is called Root of All Evil. That phrase has the value of 1111. Again, what are the chances?
Yeah. Probably
And-
not.
Yeah. And then when you take into consideration that the number 1 precedes it, so you have 1, and then this phrase, which has the value of 1111, is literally the 5 11s that I talked about earlier. And the phrase, we are in an artificial matrix, that whole entire phrase has that value.
Wow.
Now, and not only that, 777 is painted on the wall right there. Now, why 777? Well, think about it. Jesus, okay? Neo is referred to as the Jesus figure in the Matrix.
Mhm.
The gematria value of Jesus in Hebrew ordinal gematria is 37. What do we have here? We have 3 sevens. 3 and 7, 37. And not to mention the fact that we have a big red cross here. Very reminiscent to the symbol of the sun. Again, who is encoding this stuff? You know, is it happening naturally? Is the simulation encoding this? Like
Right.
putting
Is
these
it
thoughts
running
and
itself?
ideas,
Yeah.
yeah, into these people, or are they already aware? I'm under the suspicion that they're already aware. Someone's already aware of this code before I discovered it.
I think it would have to be that, because they say that the angels knew about math, and math was one of the forbidden things that they gave to us. So I think there has to be, I mean, they survived. It says they existed after the days of Noah in the Bible. So if you go with that, there's got to be some still left that can still manipulate things, still do things. They're everlasting. If we're talking about fallen angels, not their offspring, the Nephilim, they're not, everlasting. But if you still have things here like it was back in those days, I mean, I think they are in constant contact with certain things that run this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that, but yeah.
I don't know. It's so weird. I mean, when all this began, I was on the fence about the whole simulation idea. It was a fascinating idea, but then it's like, how does all the pieces fit? And the more that it's gone on, the more it just keeps coming back to this being a simulation. One of them is like the Mandela effects. And
that has me. I have a guy that blew my mind on Mandela Bible. We did 2. It's not out, the second one yet, but John Kerwin, and he wrote a whole book about it, and it's just wild. He almost lost he did lose his wife and kids over this, because they said he was a conspiracy theorist, and he was a pastor. He was literally clergy all his life, and he wrote this book called Survival of a Conspiracy Theorist, or I think it's Handbook of the Conspiracy, but I'll look it up. John Kerwin is the author. Look up with his name. It's great. But yeah, Survival Guide of a Conspiracy Theorist. And he explains these changes, but in the Bible only. I've researched it in other ways too, but I am one of those people that remember the old ways on almost all of it. And it's such a weird, it's a mind blow when you start like, no, it wasn't, no, that's not right. And he literally, gave up everything to get his message out. And he didn't want the message either. To be honest.
Well,
who would want to have that happen,
Exactly. Well, then, so, okay, you may want to show him this. So with that being said, then I'm sure one of the things that he talked about was the verse talking about the lion will, what is it? The lion will lay down with the lamb or whatever.
Yeah, it's not there anymore. Yeah,
it's not there. It's now wolf. Okay.
No way. No. Yeah.
Check this out. So I found this Bible code. Now look at this. My master search phrase was "a change will be made." Okay. So it's circled in red, and that's the words running up and down right here.
Mm-hmm.
The word crossing it right here is lamb or sheep.
Mm-hmm.
The word that's coming across right here is lion. But now the word wolf is crossing over lion. So this code is literally telling us that a change has been made. And the word wolf is crossing over lion, meaning it's crossing it out. That is the change that was made. It's no longer lion. It is now wolf.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's judge not, lest ye be judged. Never existed.
Yeah.
So many. It blows my mind. And I have a lot of those glitches, but
Yeah. But just the simple fact of finding that in a Bible code. Now, that's one of the things
Oh my gosh.
that really kind of shocks me when it comes to the Bible codes is, a lot of these are found after the fact. Now, that doesn't change anything. The information is still there.
Mhm.
What I want to figure out is, how do we find the information before these things happen?
Right.
So
Like,
that,
especially with problems like 9/11 or Trump or any of these
yeah,
things.
yeah. Because I think the only code that was found, well, maybe one or two. There were several in the book that Michael Drosnin wrote, where he had found, oh God, I can't remember who it was, that someone was going to be assassinated, and he found it before, and he went to them and told them that this is encoded in the Bible, and they didn't take it to heart. And then it's a little while later, that person was in fact assassinated. When he went back and revisited the code, he then found the assassin's name, because they knew the name of the person by that point, and they found it. It was all there. It was all there.
Anything else in the Bible about Trump in general? Just curious.
Well, I actually did a Bible code search. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. Talking about that he would win this election. Now, one of the other things that I do is I do a couple of different things. I already talked about the ITC research earlier. But I also dabble in reverse speech. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I literally found some reverse speech out of Biden's mouth, in which he basically says that we have to get him out of office, or he would be the one screwing us, or something like that.
Oh wow.
And he's talking about Trump, and this is being said backwards. And like, there was several different things that were said, and it all alluded to the fact that Trump actually had won the election, but it was rigged. When I released that video, YouTube instantly took it down
I'm sure.
within just a matter of days. So we'll find out. So if Trump does win, that Bible code was found before, and I still have that video, so I can show that when it happens, if it happens.
Everybody keeps referring about the Antichrist situation with him, and I don't get into politics much, but that I am curious about, because there's a lot of weird things with numbers and all this weird stuff that I was telling you about Brandon Kroll, and he really researches. Shout out Brandon. But man, sometimes you shake your head and go, it's almost too much for a coincidence, kind of like what you said, like where you're stepping back going, what's going on here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not sold, but boy, I opened my eyes a little. I don't know.
I was going to show you one other quick thing here.
Sure. I would never point my finger and absolutely be like, yes, she is the Antichrist, but it does make you wonder. Just saying.
So let's look here at I thought this was kind of cool when I came across this. Mm-hmm. So in Hebrew, the word for man is spelt, it's the letters Aleph. I'm going to put spaces in here so you can actually see this. So it's Aleph, Dalet, and the letter Mem, or M. Okay. So look at that. It's ADM. That's where we get the name Adam from. Mm-hmm. But I've separated the letters, okay? But when you put the letters together, whoops, it's the wrong. Okay, so let me explain this. So this letter, Mem, right here at the very end. When it appears at the end of a word, it changes shape, okay? And its actual shape becomes this. Why is, oh, because I have it on Spanish. It needs to be English. Sorry. So now, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, it literally translates to a person. It does not translate to a man. It's simply a person, period. Neither male nor female. It's essentially the mold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that spelling is used for man in the Bible. But when they say the name Adam in the Bible, it has the letter He in front of it. Now, the letter He by itself means God.
Mm.
But it's often used in front of a word to represent the word the. So the spelling of Adam in the Bible is this, but the translation is literally the person.
Hmm.
Now, here's something else unique. So the Bible says that Adam was made from the soil, right? Well, literally, when you look at the word, we can actually make that happen. So if we take the first letter, He, and move it to the end of the word, it says Adam. But remember, this letter right here appears in this form when it's at the end of a word, but now it's no longer at the end of a word. So now it must take the previous form, which translates to land or soil, as we can see here. Earth, ground, soil.
Wow.
So literally, Adam is made from the soil, at least in the language.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's just an interesting play there.
Very. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
This
but the
has been
other phrase, and
definitely
we'll end this here because I don't want to reveal everything.
right.
Give people a chance to read the book or
Yeah.
watch
And
the
see your
videos.
channel. Yeah.
But the other phrase was Garrick King decodes the God matrix, has the value of 1111.
Mm.
So it's literally, and keep in mind, I didn't start seeing this number until I legally changed my name to my husband's last name, King. Okay.
Right.
That started all of this.
Wow.
And for my name to appear in phrases such as this, Garrick King decodes the God matrix, which is exactly what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it has that value because if I had never changed my name, if I had kept my last name, Staggs, none of this would have ever happened because the value then becomes 1340. Big difference.
Mm-hmm. Weird.
Not kings. King. So again, it's these bizarre, air quotes the word coincidences.
I guess after this many of them, I don't know how many you can have. That's weird. Yeah.
My favorite one is this one here. Garrick King, Aliens Made You, has the value of 11.
Oh. Oh boy.
Which is most interesting because in my ITC research, a lot of the photographs that I have gotten in liquid are extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings. Not all of them, but there is a huge number. And some of these are as clear as night and day.
Wow.
Coming through in these images. And one final thing I'll throw in here is when COVID first started, we were all basically stuck in our houses. So one of the things I started doing was just looking at YouTube videos, and I came across Huff Paranormal, his YouTube channel, and how he was, communicating with spirits. And I thought, okay, well, this is something I would like to try because I've had dozens of paranormal experiences throughout my entire life. So I started using the apps I have them on my phone. I can't remember what they're all called here. Like the Miracle Box, Signal was another one. Dead Wave, I think, was one of them. I started using those, and I started trying to communicate with my dad. Okay. And I literally feel like I made a connection. He was answering questions that only he could know. And he said some very bizarre things. One of the things I asked him was, I asked him, do you like it where you are? And it was so funny. His response was, uh-huh. Just like, yeah, sure. Uh-huh. And it was so weird hearing that come through, like that. And so I said, can you tell me where you are? Are you in a building somewhere? Are you outside? Like what,
Right.
where are you on the other side? And his response was, we are by the sea. And I was like, interesting. Like, what does that mean? And my brother said, that he goes, that makes me think of like the waters above and the waters below. And I said, well, what if he's talking about a sea of stars? And he's like, well, that's another good thought. So I then asked him, can you tell me what you do there? And he said, we build. And I was like, okay, you build. What do you build? And he said, no joke, I can send you the recordings if you want to hear him. He said, spaceship hull.
Oh.
And I said, Dad, did you just say spaceship? And he goes, possibly. Like he was fucking with me, like just teasing me or something.
Oh, that's funny.
But here's the thing. When I was doing those recordings, I recorded on a Zoom, what was it, H6, I think is what I had at the time. And I did that so that I could record my voice on one track and the spirit voice is coming in on a separate track. Because when you're using these apps, it'll just start generating, speech or whatever as you're talking. So I didn't want to not be able to understand what was being said if I was talking over them or they were talking over me, whichever. So having them on two separate tracks, I could listen to it separately without my voice being heard. And when I asked that question, yes, you build, but what do you build? There was another voice that came in that had I not recorded those tracks separately, I never would have understood what was being said. But because I did, the voice that came through was, we are not alone. Like it was straight up out of the X-Files. Now,
wow.
The question here remains, what is he referring to when he says we are not alone? Is he talking about we're not alone in the universe?
Right.
Or was he saying we are not alone in this conversation? In other words, I feel that he was being monitored. And in fact, I can almost prove it because I asked him, Dad, can you tell me why I keep seeing the number 1111? He said, what is it? Like he was buying some time. And I didn't catch what he said there during the recording. It was only after, I played it back that I was able to make that part out. And I said, is it important? And he said, might. Just the word might, like it might be. But then two other voices came in separately. One said, you can't answer that. And the other one said, you can't tell him. Then the last thing that I heard was my dad say, I can't say. From that moment forward, I have been unable to connect with my dad at all. At all. So someone was literally monitoring that conversation and was preventing him from answering that question.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if it's because, what the reasons were, but I kind of feel like maybe it was because I needed to find this stuff on my own I needed to figure this stuff out on my own. He couldn't have a part in telling me, except maybe he was part of the reason why I was waking up at 3:33, and maybe he was part of the white light that was the cause of, before I started seeing 11:11. I don't know.
Right.
It's just, again, odd that he would show up in a dream when I would stop seeing 3:33.
Yeah, for sure. Especially where he's coming out of the closet, which is like, kind of a scary thing, but then an awakening too. Like you open it, you're opening. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when you're a kid, you're afraid, but then opens up. Yeah.
It makes me think of the movie Monsters Inc. as well, where the closets were the portals to all the other parts of,
True.
So it was very odd, that he was coming out of the. It's so weird for me to say the phrase coming out of the closet, because being gay, that means something completely different.
Yeah, totally different.
So I don't
no relation to that. That's
coming out of the closet,
Yeah, exactly. That's funny.
But
well, this has been really enlightening, and I think people should read the book. I think you're right. I think you have to, get things for yourself, because anybody that is in certain orders or whatever, not that I would want to be a part of those, but like, what do they always say? You have to do the work, right? You have to do the work. And same thing with religion. They don't want to just give you I guess not religion, biblical studies. We'll say that. I hate the word religion. Anyway, whatever. You got to do it for yourself, because you won't know until you do it for yourself. So that makes complete sense. And I think it's a worthwhile read. I think, it gives us some little peeks into some things, and I mean, good to know what's happening if it is a solar flare in 2058 and we all are going to be in a bad way if not. So yeah, that's kind of scary. But not, I mean, it's good to know things beforehand, I think, always, especially where there's so much doom and gloom right now.
Right.
A minute to breathe, because it's not tomorrow probably, but then who knows? I mean, I think, like you said, there's too many little weird things for it to all be a coincidence. This is a lot of stuff. This is almost like a whole nother. I mean, the code is like a language. It's almost like a developed language. So same thing with John Dee. It just because whatever he was doing later doesn't irrelevancy the whole language he figured out. So it's still. People use it to this day. So it's interesting, and people need to check it out.
Yeah. Well, what I've like demonstrated today is just like, it's a small portion, and I have, for sake of time, jumped around a bit. So I understand it's going to be hard for some people to make those connections and literally see how they come together. But, read the book in order, and you'll see it fall into place like a puzzle. And I even describe it in the book that way, that it's a puzzle. And when you're creating a puzzle, what do you do first? You put the whole outside together, and then you start filling in all the other, pieces, to where then it ultimately produces the image. And gematria actually works the same way, because you can take two certain words that are unrelated, but they have the same gematria value. Okay. So when it's like that, people tend to think, well, how does that even, that like gematria, it's just stupid. Like, you're finding connections where connections don't exist. They do. You just have to understand, again, it's like a puzzle. If you have a box or two boxes of two separate puzzles, and each one has 1,000 pieces, okay? That's the value of the puzzle, okay? Dump them out into piles. Mix them up, okay? Start trying to find the pieces that match. You're going to find pieces that don't match, even though they have the same number of pieces. But eventually you'll find all the ones that come together and form that final picture. I mean, that's how gematria works.
Yeah.
So you got to find the connections. And, you know, I tell people, don't take what I say at face value. Do the research, do all the work that I did, and see if you come out with the same result.
Right.
I guarantee you will.
That's wild.
So,
well,
yeah.
Tell people where they can find your book once again and your channel,
Sure.
so that they can get this information for themselves, like you said, to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called The 1111 Matrix Code. It's on Amazon. And again, it's available in Kindle format, paperback, and hardback. And if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can read it for free. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is, again, the 1111 Matrix Code. Just type that in on YouTube and you'll find it. I do want to let people know that I am being targeted right now by YouTube, trying to demonetize every single one of my videos because they say that I'm using unlicensed music. I have the license. I paid for it. I keep submitting it. They keep denying it. And then like the fourth or fifth time that I submit it, they finally go, oh yeah, you have a license. But they're targeting me left and right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. And it happens. I only release once a week on YouTube because the same thing is not with music, but just in general. They like to pretty much hide my videos. And it went really viral for a minute and it got like thousands and thousands and then nothing. And I just do it once a week, but people can find me on Spotify, other places. I've just gotten over it, and plus you have to be careful about saying any words. It's like a whole maze in itself. So,
yep.
But hopefully this will bring light to your life. If you want to look into this, this is really interesting information. I think it's got some value in it. You can see that there's two. I mean, honestly, just take one piece, just the 9/11 piece alone, or just the Trump thing alone, or just whatever. But I mean, you can't just say, well, okay, who cares? I mean, I guess you can if you want to stay asleep, but trying to wake up people. That's what we're doing here. So I appreciate you, Garrick, for coming on. This was fantastic. Thank you so much also for letting me read your book. So that's been fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy talking about this.
Yeah, it's great because it's so many things that you're just kind of like, whoa. And I know when I watch it the next time, like when I watch it myself, I'll even get more things because in the moment you're like, wow, you're just sitting there kind of like Ghost said, like, whoa, you're just saying, whoa, whoa, the whole time.
Yeah.
So
well, I pointed this out to him too. And I even mentioned this in the book is that usually when I'm on these types of podcasts, almost every single host has said, oh my God, you have just blown my mind. Yeah. And I come back to him and I say, do you know the phrase mind blowing has the value of 1111?
Of course it does. That's wild. Oh my gosh. Well, I definitely had my mind blown as well. So we'll 1111 that. Thanks so much again. I appreciate all the time you took. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to put all this into a digestible, like even minimalized situation, because I get that. And when it's so big, Yeah. And that's hard. So thank you again. And I hope maybe we'll be having you back soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yes, of course. Thanks again.
Uh-huh.
Bye.